All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back after the coffee break. I hope you had time to refresh and to get some conversations going. Our global forum is also always an important platform to meet with old friends and start communications with new ones. So please use the breaks for those elements. Now we have our special session to launch the UNEVOC Bridging Innovation and Learning in TVET project, short BILT. We're very glad to be able to present this to you now. And I would like to introduce very quickly to you the people we've already sitting on the panel here. Starting from the left, we have Shamal Majumdar, you know him, head of UNESCO-UNEVOC, followed by Oliver Diehl. He's deputy head of Unit 312, Regulation of Vocational Training and BIBB from the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research. Next is Birgit Thomann. She's the director and head of Department 3, TVET International of the BIBB in German, so very closely connected, the two. Then we move on to Ronny Sannerud. He's from Oslo Met in Norway. We have Luis Aquilina from MCAST in Malta. We have Inigo Araiztegui from Technica, which is in the Basque Country in Spain. We have Volker Wedekind of Nottingham University in the United Kingdom. Eric Swars of TVET in Switzerland, and Edwin Tarno from the Rift Valley Technical Training Institute, RVTTI, in Kenya, and last but not least, Wenming Yang, Shenzhen Polytechnic in China. So you see we have a very full program, so we have to be quite efficient with time. But to get started, we've prepared a short introductory video for you to give you a little bit of a frame of the Bridging Innovation and Learning in TVET project. So let's get started. If you could dim the lights to 25%, please.
Rapid technological innovation cycles, increasing awareness of environmental responsibility and social demand for inclusive and sustainable development affect the way we live and work. Modern technical and vocational education and training has to adapt to global trends to remain attractive to learners and relevant to employers. As digitalization affects most lines of work, basic digital skills are essential in the 21st century. To harness the opportunities of Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence and virtual reality, businesses need employees with new skill sets. The global shift towards renewable energy and more sustainable consumption and production patterns requires investments in green skills and competencies. Greening TVET is not only a key to greater sustainability, but green jobs are also a growing field of employment opportunities. Entrepreneurship is increasingly seen as an essential pathway towards employment, especially where formal employment opportunities are limited. TVET institutions are seeking new strategies to foster entrepreneurial skills and unlock the innovation potential of young people. TVET also plays an important role in the context of migration. Skills development of migrants and the recognition of their prior qualifications and competencies pose additional challenges to TVET systems, but are crucial for the effective integration of migrants into the labour market and society. To tackle these TVET challenges on digitalization, entrepreneurship, greening and migration, the Bridging Innovation and Learning in TVET project brings together the members of the European UNEVOC Network and other TVET stakeholders to share innovative practices in these respective fields. A special focus is placed on exchanging experiences of how new qualifications and competencies find their way into practice through their integration in training and curricula. The BILT Project provides a platform to accelerate innovation through peer learning and partnership, first with a focus on Europe and later in a bridging component with Africa and Asia.
All right, so now we have a little bit of a framing of the BILT project. So we have introduced the 5 topics that we have: digitalization and industry 4.0, greening TVET, entrepreneurship in TVET, migration in TVET, and last but not least, how we integrate innovations and learning in new qualifications and competencies. And with this framing, I would like to get started now with the opening statements to introduce our BILT project, and I would like to ask Shamal to get started. Please.
I'm very pleased to officially launch this BILT project. BILT is Bridging Innovation and Learning in TVET. To me, it is another milestone project. Thanks to BMBF, Bibi for a huge support and behind the discussion how to make it happen. You can ask me why we have started this project. We have an innovation hub project, another bridging. Traveling across Europe, from the network experience, I realize Europe has many things to offer. In this changing time, where repeatedly we are saying the mega trends, how TVET institutions should respond to that, I think Europe has a plethora of experiences. A lot of good, innovative practices are going on. We want to utilize this moment to consolidate that in the Europe clusters. Not just Europe become only excellence. Because if you look digitization, climatic change, migration, this is not regional agenda. This is global agenda. Unemployment is an issue now in Europe. Unemployment is severely issue in Asia, Africa, and many countries. So it is nothing new that we are talking about the climatic change, unemployment, migration issue. There are silent migration. There is a refugee problem. Things are happening globally, which need clearly a synergy. Synergy between Europe and rest of the world. So we thought initially we will start this bridging in an intention, first consolidate the Europe cluster on this. See, when we talk about circular economy, what is the impact on qualification? What is the impact on the occupation? Exactly. What are the new type of occupations are coming? As Laura, you rightly said, you want challenge. The world is full of challenge. We don't have a prescriptive solution. We don't know how things are changing in different fields and different ways. And I think that's why we thought, okay, let's start a new project called this BILT. The first phase of the BILT is consolidate Europe UNEVOC Center on 4 work streams with an eye for new qualification and new occupations. Then bridge with Asia and Africa initially. You might tell me why other regions are not considered. Because of funding availability, we are sure that in the next phase to come, it will be gone to the other region also. But make it happen because UNESCO-UNEVOC is a multilateral platform. We can provide you a plethora of UNEVOC centers around the globe, and Europe has a challenge now to make it what works in Europe, how it can be translated in the region, what work in Asia, Africa, why not Europe get a good feedback from them? Because we need to know one thing very clear, that is we have to contextualize the experiences. Without context, there is no meaning. We have to build bridges, not the world. World need peace, not cracks. Let us build up the bridge sincerely on the both sides of the region and have a peaceful, prosperous, happy world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shamal, for these reflections. Now I would like to call Oliver Deal to the microphone and ask him for his reflection on the BILT Lounge.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I'm proud to be here. Thanks, Shamal, for your kind introduction to the project. The German Ministry of Education and Research is one of the sponsors of the idea, but we're not the owners of the idea. I would like to take up Bohan's message from today. I think multilateralism is alive. We are trying to promote a lot of these ideas within our thinking and our doing, and BILT is one emblematic example of it, and I hope you get fired up about it as you listen to it and as you participate in this conference. Second, the challenges are huge. I think this is also a thesis of Bohan, and I want to underline it. The challenges are huge and the work is hard, and we have to work harder on it. I was quite impressed about this morning's figures, impressed and a little bit frightened to see how we are going to continue over the next decades with that. But we are trying to contribute, so I would like to focus on vocational training because BILT is a TVET project. 3 aspects which I want to highlight and which kind of show our dedication to continue this effort. First, we have a very colorful scene of vocational training. It's the heart and soul of the workforce and its embeddment with the economy. So vocational training needs a new framing. I think we feel that in many occasions when young people have the choice between an academic pathway and a vocational pathway, we want to work in the BILT project to make that happen and to show the relevance of vocational training also in the future and a prospective future. Second, the European cluster has been highlighted. Of course, there are traditional TVET countries, not only Germany. I have a colleague from Switzerland here. These are European models and they are embedded in their cultural settings. There's no doubt about it. But one of the issues that Laura mentioned, we are trying to realize, being practical, being not only school-based. Of course, this does not translate in all your country settings. We are trying to find a common language to explain and maybe also exchange the experiences. A third point, and my last point for us is that only if we talk amongst traditional and maybe newcomers in the VET system, talk about our weaknesses. I think this was Shamal's point this morning. We are trying to learn. I will not go into depth. You will be bored about it. But the so successful German TVET system is also undergoing systematic pressures. We have the demography going on. We have the image of vocational training. We have a lack of basic skills in many cases. So I think we're talking about the same subjects, and I'm very, very pleased if the project is starting, if you're participating, and we will not stop with Africa and Asia. We're open to all partners who are willing to participate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oliver Diehl. Now I would like to pass on the microphone to Ms. Birgit Thomann. As you have heard earlier, Bibi is coordinating the BILT project in coordination with UNESCO-UNEVOC, so we're very closely related on a day-to-day basis. So please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Shamal and Oliver, for your remarks. There is not that much left, I should say. Nevertheless, I think some personal remarks and also some things that I remember quite well from the beginning. So when we started to talk about the BILT project, we really had no idea how much this project really will challenge our perseverance. So a trilateral cooperation between UNESCO-UNEVOC, the German Ministry of Education and Research, and the BIBB, the Federal Institute for Vocational Education and Training. So this didn't sound like really using a blueprint. So it was really something that challenged us, and it also took the energy and also a good amount of creativity till we finally came up with a framework, and we realized that already in designing this project, we start to build bridges. So, and today, I can say it was worth every effort we took. The work that has already been done since the launching workshop in July, the work is apparent. And I think by this project, the UNEVOC Network will really serve as a platform for peer learning and also for sharing new approaches to the current challenges of TVET systems worldwide, including Germany. And this is the point that Oliver mentioned, and this is absolutely correct. So therefore, I would like to thank you, the guests, and also the delegates from the UNEVOC centers worldwide for bringing in your perspectives and also your national experiences. I would like to thank Oliver Diehl on behalf of the German Ministry of Education and Research for funding the project, but also for bringing in the national perspective and the political backing. I'd like to thank my colleagues at the BIB, Vera Haag and Michael Schwarz, who worked very hard to make this project a success. And last but not least, Jamal, I'd like to thank you because you dedicate really your energy to TVET and in particular to the strategic development of the regional clusters. So thank you very much for your continuous efforts. And thank you to you and your team for hosting this event and the chance and opportunity to combine peer learning in the European cluster with the UNEVOC clusters in Asia and Africa. The BIBB is a member of the UNEVOC network and already since 1994, which means there is 25 years of cooperation. Of sharing expertise and of being really committed to the work of UNESCO and of UNESCO-UNEVOC. So, and I'm really convinced that this platform we need it today more than ever. The impact of the climate change was mentioned already. The implications deriving from the digitalization and the deployment of artificial intelligence. The worldwide migration from south to north, but also from the rural areas to the cities and megacities. Those are really global challenges we face jointly, and I think we need to pool our expertise in TVET in order to do what we call thinking out of the box, in order to find new approaches and solutions, and that offer also additional value to our national TVET systems. So the UNEVOC network is really at the heart of UNESCO-UNEVOC. I know that Shamal always put emphasis on the development of the regional clusters and also of their performance in the network. And well, it was to us not very well to understand, but we realized that the activities of the European cluster fell a little bit short to the expertise and experience that each European member of the cluster could provide. This we wanted to change. And I hope we are on a good way. I'm sure we are on a good way. I think we started to activate the cluster. This was the birth of the project, which we later on named BILT. And I think it will build and support collaboration activities in the European cluster, but also in the neighboring clusters of Africa and Asia. It will build and strengthen the capacities of the regional clusters by means of peer learning, and it will build and explore new approaches on TVET, for instance, regarding the attractive career pathways in the various TVET systems. So at the BIBB, we are looking forward to sharing our expertise as well as sharing our practices, good practices from the German TVET system. But we also are part of the global challenges, and we are keen to learn from your experience in your respective countries. And we are convinced that this will also be beneficial to us, to our work, and to our system. So I'm really pleased and it's a pleasure and a privilege to attend the UNEVOC Global Forum and the BILT launch. And I wish this event really a successful development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thoman, and also to Oliver Diehl and Shamal for their kind words for the launch of our BILT project. So as they've already mentioned, I just want to reiterate quickly the key goals of the BILT project. The first one is to activate the European cluster. As you've heard, there's really a wealth of experience from very many different approaches on TVET, and we want to make sure it's accessible. We want to have a platform to exchange on innovative practices. There are many different institutions and in many different countries. They approach innovation in different ways, and we can learn a lot from the experiences that each of us makes. We also want to identify new qualifications and competencies, so we want to make sure which new things do learners really need to acquire, and how do we make sure we implement that in practice. And last but not least, the bridging element of it, we have to make sure that through exchange, we believe there's a faster uptake of new developments, and only if we exchange and challenge each other, we'll move ahead quicker and probably also with a higher quality. So that just as a little bit of background. Now I want to just very briefly comment on the project timeline. We have been very innovative with BILT actually, because we have, it's the only project of UNESCO-UNEVOC that has had a kickoff and a launch. So you might wonder, why do we have these two different events? The kickoff took place in July, and the reason was because we have this initial focus on Europe, because we needed to get started to consolidate the European cluster before we can take the next step. So that was the event dedicated to kicking off the project at the European level. But now, after we had some activities, we're ready to take it further and go internationally, and that's the launch. So kickoff is a sideway, launch goes up. So we're basically launching our BILT rocket and hope that it will fly with us for quite a long time. So the next elements were then workstream workshops, and these were quite amazing. So as you can see, the topics I've mentioned before: digitalization, greening, entrepreneurship, migration, and new qualifications and competencies. What's quite important to know is it's not something that we've just picked out of the blue, or it comes from UNESCO-UNEVOC. It comes from a very long co-development process with other UNEVOC centers. So we've started this process actually in 2017 with online surveys, with meetings here, with consultations, also involving representatives from Africa and Asia. We've identified the main themes and then step by step narrowed down which of the topics we want to address in those. So since the launch in July 2019, just a few months ago, we've now had 4 of 5 of those thematic workshops where we have brought together experts to discuss key elements in those respective fields. One is still coming up, which is the one on migration, which will take place next week in Nottingham in the United Kingdom. But now we would like to reflect and share with you what we have learned in these workshops, and it was really very rich. It was experts workshop, so everybody who came had some real project to share, and it was very, very important. So here on stage you have now what we call workstream focal points. They have agreed to take a lead role hosting the workshop for these respective themes. And we have Ronny Sannerud from Oslo Met, who hosted the Industry 4.0 and Digitalization workshop. Luis Aquilina with MCAST in Malta did the Greening in TVET workshop. Inigo Arraiztegui, Technica, did the Entrepreneurship workshop. As just mentioned, Volker Wedekind will be Migration at the University of Nottingham next week. And just, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were at TVET together with Eric Swaas in Switzerland to discuss new qualifications and competencies. And with that, I think we're ready to start our discussion. So I would like to get started with Ronny and ask him if he could reflect a little bit, why is it relevant for TVET to address digitalization in Industry 4.0?
Yes, thank you. You can hear me? That's good. Yes, I think I can summarize this in four points. Because it's digital skills related to the industry and the world of work in Norway is very important. Youth and adults need these skills to face the future. Second, OsloMet is a vocational teachers training institution and must provide updated knowledge to the students. And we should be able to contribute to necessary collaboration between the industry and the education on digitalization. Fourth, share experience and contribute in the BILT project. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Could you maybe also let us know why you picked particularly this theme? Why is it important for OsloMet to pick up the topic of Industry 4.0 and digitalization?
Yes, I think it's important for us because it's, as I say, it's very teacher training institution, and we need to be on updated for the TVET in Norway because we are the main institution to train teachers, and we also have to collaborate internally in our university with other departments, other faculties on this topic. So it's quite wide, but if I'm very narrow, I focus on TVET, but it's, of course this is more than that for OsloMet.
If you think back to the workshop itself, we discussed, for example, quite intensively the importance of connecting industry or TVET and small and medium-sized enterprise. Could you reflect a little bit what was the importance in that?
Yes, I think it's if we want to succeed with this change or whatever, we need to collaborate with the industry. It's very important, and in Norway, of course, and other places too. It's the small and medium enterprises is very important, and you have to maybe to work together in clusters or networks or so on. So it's not possible for us to make this change without strong collaboration with the industry and small and big companies, of course. Yeah.
I remember also quite well that the element of trust building between TVET training institutions and SMEs was a very important element.
Yeah.
Could you maybe reflect a little bit how you have engaged in that?
Yes, of course. We for many years, of course, we have not this last 4 or 5 years, but this have been for many years. We have tried to work together with the industry, but and now we have very much focus on clusters. Technology clusters or industry business clusters. It's very important for us because we can reach more or others companies when we are out of these clusters, because it's there we find interesting partners, and yeah, so it's very important for us to work with clusters. I think it's
Excellent, thank you. And what do you think how the BILT project can help bridge innovations and learning that we have discussed in the workshop in Norway, so that others can benefit from different approaches?
I think it's the workshop we have in Norway. We have quite good examples. This can be shared with others. And of course, we need to analyze what is in it, but some of them was very, let's say, it's big scale, and others was very didactically training oriented, and some of them was training or training aids, like so it's so it was a lot of different kind of interesting projects or teams was presented in Oslo. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Ronny, then for sharing with us what we had discussed in Oslo on this theme. I would now like to move on with Luis. You hosted the workshop on greening TVET.
Yes.
And I would like to ask you, why do you think it is relevant for TVET to pick up the topic of greening TVET?
Well, that's a really good question, Jens. All the thematic workshops are important. All the areas are important. However, we notice that there is still a weakness in the greening area, in the sense that many people, well, everyone agrees that greening is important. But when it comes to doing, there is a lack of energy, I believe. And we were interested in all the thematic workshops, but we picked on greening because we saw a lot of potential in it, ranging from, first of all, saving our planet, doing something to really contribute to the sustainability of development and environment, and also to help institutions to develop ways and means how to implement greening really in their way of being, the way of existence.
There are different elements to greening that have been picked up. So we have elements on greening the campus, greening the curriculum, and greening cities. Could you maybe share a few words on the importance of these dimensions?
Yes, of course, definitely. Things that came out from the thematic workshop were very, very evident. The greening issue should be tackled in a number of fora. First of all, the sections are education, which is fundamental to instill a greening culture in the youngsters and in the young generation, the generation of tomorrow. Communities and the industry, especially the stakeholders and governments, to tackle the greening issues as is now, because we cannot wait any longer. And these issues really came out through the thematic workshop. What was really positive about the workshop was that the people attending it were all committed to contributing. So everyone who attended presented their own actions, their own projects that are ongoing, and in fact there was a lot of knowledge sharing. Hopefully it will lead to good results in the future.
Another important element is, I think, greening is not only something that is driven from international organizations or from governments. It has also come out quite clearly that companies are interested in greening, and not necessarily only, I mean, they do have a concern for the planet as well, but for them, efficiency is also a key performance indicator, and anything that helps them to increase efficiency is something that is welcome. Often it aligns with themes that we discuss in greening, with reducing consumption of energy, reducing consumption of materials, increasing recycling and reuse. Is there anything that you can reflect upon or share with us how industry approaches TVET institutions with a demand for people with green skills?
Well, yes, I think the industry demand for greening is increasing as we go along. Looking at, for example, technology, the requirements for greening initiatives nowadays is much, much more than it was 10 years ago. It goes anything from renewables to also to waste generation, waste recycling, etc., etc., etc. As you rightly said, the industry is typically bottom line driven. So this is a fact, we cannot do without it. But it is coming more and more evident that greening can actually contribute to the bottom line. It can contribute in a variety of ways. And we have, in fact, ongoing projects, student projects, that show that greening actually can be very industrialized and very productive. So it's really the coming of age, I think, of greening. We're going through that phase.
Can you give us maybe your personal highlight of the examples that were given, and maybe say how this can be used by others? So in the end, our goal is to learn about new innovative aspects and to see how we can bridge it and make it accessible to others. Can you let us know a bit about that?
Well, basically, as I said, the thematic workshop involved a good number of practical examples that are actually working in greening. And I tried to synthesize what was said into a number of factors. The factors that came out quite commonly across the practical examples was, first of all, there must be an involvement of all the stakeholders, basically the VET institution, the governments or authorities, and the industry. Where there were these three stakeholders present and contributing, there was success. So this is fundamental. You can't go all the distance by yourself. It's something, I call it the win cubed combination, win-win-win. Communities through the governments, VET institutions, and the industry. Another thing that came out from all the examples was what I call start them young. If you want to go into greening, greening must be involved in curriculum at a very young age, even at kindergarten level. We must instill something in the mindset about greening, about our planet, about the sustainability of the environment at a very young age. It must be instilled into education. Another factor that came out was we have seen that in many practical examples that have a success, like greening the communities in Finland, for example, we have the example of Espoo, is you need to have a champion. Typically, these examples, these practical examples worked well when there was a champion, a key person who drove the initiative home and led by example. And then you have this snowball effect. So if you have somebody really giving his or her life, doing something useful for the greening, then you start to, vibrate and excite people around you, and you get a movement going. And it's something that was very, very evident from the... So these are the three aspects that I think really came out from the workshop.
All right, thank you very much. We're rushed for time, so we have to move on to Inigo to give you a bit of an idea of what we had discussed in the field of entrepreneurship. And Inigo, why is it relevant for you to address entrepreneurship in TVET from your perspective? And what have you learned from the workshop that we held in Technica?
So entrepreneurship is relevant for us as UNEVOC centers for two main reasons. The first reason is that entrepreneurship is a competence for everyone. So entrepreneurship should not be confused with business education. Entrepreneurship is about innovation, about creativity, about communication, about networking, about risk-taking, planning or managing projects. So it's a day-to-day competence for everyone, and it's relevant for all the aspects of the world. So this is the first reason. And the second reason is that if we take the UNESCO-UNEVOC TVET strategy, entrepreneurship is one of the pillars. So we should contribute to it. These are the two main reasons that explain the relevance of entrepreneurship.
I think entrepreneurship is one of those fields where when you go to different institutions, there's really a wealth of different approaches and so many ideas of how to foster creativity and innovation in institutions and move forward. And it's really great to have a platform to collect some of those examples and make sure others can draw ideas from them. An important element in this whole aspect of entrepreneurship, I think, is teacher training, and that has also been one of the elements that you had discussed. Often the challenge is, of course, you have people who are not entrepreneurs tell other people to be entrepreneurial. So we have the challenge of educating them well to fulfill that role efficiently. Could you reflect a little bit upon that and what we had discussed in the workshop?
Yes. So I'd like to highlight three key elements because if we agree in that entrepreneurship is a relevant competence, then the next question is, as Jamal was saying, now we know the what, but the how do we teach it? So in this thing, we should consider three key aspects. The first key aspect is that we should take into account the personality of young people. Laura was saying it, we don't like these kind of things, we'll prefer these kind of things, and so on, because we are teaching them. The second one is that we should consider that entrepreneurship cannot be a matter of a single subject. It should be spread in the whole degree. Every subject should contribute. It cannot be that you had entrepreneurship from 9 to 10. It doesn't work. And the next thing is that, again, we should not confuse entrepreneurship and business education. So if we take these three things into account, we should take our students, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that they prefer to work in challenges, work in groups, and so on. So this is one way. The other one is to mix subjects. So they should be working in challenges, but not one challenge per subject. So we can take 3 or 4 subjects and do a big challenge where we have this small group working, and this will work better to teach entrepreneurship. So we decided to take the lead in it because we saw that although there were a lot of countries in Europe, especially in Europe, where entrepreneurship is already in the curricula and where entrepreneurship is already being worked, there were still some gaps. And these gaps are mostly related to, I will say something not very correct, but incompetent teachers. So meaning that teachers teaching entrepreneurship without any idea of entrepreneurship. Also wrong methodologies, so it won't work. And yeah, lack of interdisciplinarity. So at Technica, we've been working in the last years with this, teacher training, mixing different subjects, working in challenges, developing new methodologies. And we thought that it was interesting for us to take the lead on this BILT work stream on entrepreneurship, just to share our experience with others and help others, but also to learn from others and see what other people are doing.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. I think there's a wealth in the field of entrepreneurship that we can learn from and also share within Europe, but also then in the bridging with Africa and Asia. I think this is something where we can really move forward as a UNEVOC network and share good approaches and learn from the experiences that others have made. Now I would like to pass on to Volker Wedekind. This is the only workshop that has not yet taken place. It will come next week. But I would like to ask you also to get started with why do you think is it important for us to address the issue of migration in TVET?
I think if you were listening to most of the the keynote speakers this morning, you would have heard why that's important. I mean, migration is, while it is historically very much a human phenomenon that's cut across time, so it's not a new thing, it is something that affects all of us, and it affects us at a very unprecedented level at the moment in terms of movement, just in terms of the sheer numbers of people. But also, it is everywhere, and there are different forms of migration, and I think that that's one of the things that we've started realizing, that often when we say migration is an issue, the immediate default is about refugees, but there's actually a lot of other migration and different forms of migration. Some of it voluntary, some of it forced, depending on climate change, conflict, and so on. But a lot of it is also people just making decisions about where they see opportunities for themselves. And so there are really important challenges in that, but there are also great opportunities, and many parts of the world need migration if they're going to survive. And particularly Europe is one region where migration is critical for the long-term economic development.
I think in our previous discussions that we had led in the development of this workshop, it was also quite clear that when we talk about migration, it's not only a European challenge, and often we are a bit Eurocentric in perceiving that we're the only ones affected by migration. In fact, Africa and Asia, they probably bear the brunt of migration themselves. So the challenges that we have are probably significantly higher, even felt in Asia and Africa. So we believe that from the learnings that we have, we can also get engaged in discussions with migration topics in Africa and Asia. So that's an important element. But to go quite concretely on TVET again, could you maybe quickly say which of the topics we're going to address in our workshop?
I mean, we're looking at it at a number of different levels in terms of systems and intergovernmental relations there, because obviously with migration, recognition of qualifications across systems, understanding how systems differ, not necessarily trying to make them the same, but being able to make the translation across those, and the needs of the migrants maybe in relation to addressing those gaps would be one aspect. Another key strand would be around social integration and the inclusion in society. And I think within that, what we really want to shift away from is always focusing on the migrants and saying, you know, they're the ones who need to be sorted out, but also actually saying, what is it about ourselves and our own institutions that needs to change? What do we need to do to make our home students more open and our home industries more open to migrants, and find the kinds of examples that we can build on that would impact on, say, trainers in companies, teachers in colleges, and the students that are already there.
All right, thank you, Volker. So next week we'll have this workshop bringing together experts from Europe on recognition of prior learning, social inclusion, international mobility, and also this important aspect of preparing those who work with migrants to work with them effectively, often a topic that is easily forgotten. Now we move on to our last theme, which is new qualifications and competencies, and I would like to ask Eric to give us his reflection. Why do you think it is important to address this topic in TVET?
Thank you very much, Jens. Yeah, maybe just allow me one general remark, because when I started my studies, I think now almost 30 years ago, one of the first slides I saw in the classroom was, oh, the world is changing. The world is changing fast. So, of course, the challenges now are maybe different, but yeah, so this is nothing new. And yeah, we are always here, and I think we should not be scared of this new world, of these changes, but rather take it as an opportunity to shape the youth, to prepare the youth for the world of work. Yeah, as TVET, Switzerland is now since June actually this year quite new, so UNEVOC Center. We are very, very glad and pleased to organize this workshop on new competencies and new qualifications. And we had really rich exchanges with many European countries. And I think the most important objective of vocational education and training is that at the end of the program, the learner has the competencies that corresponds to the needs of the labor market. So including all the skills we have discussed now, greening, digital competencies, entrepreneurship, etc., etc. And therefore it is really crucial that the curricula, so these competencies, are continuously updated. So are updated up to date, and also that the economy has a role to play there, so that they are involved in defining this curricula. So this public-private partnership seems very important to us.
Thank you very much. I think this was a very important workshop to have, because if we think about the four themes that we've already heard about, when we have identified innovations and new things in TVET, in the end, the big question is, what do we do with it? And in this new qualifications and competencies work stream, this is the element where we make sure it finds its way into practice. There are two important elements. One of it is the systemic level, so that is how we bring it into curricula and into TVET systems. And the second one is the practical level. How do we prepare teachers and make sure we manage the teacher-learner interface to make sure that the things we've identified as important are also transported in training. In that respect, we had also identified 4 dimensions, particularly in the part of system integration. Would you be able to reflect on that for a moment?
Yes, because the think the work stream new competencies concerns actually all the other work streams also. I think there will be the survey afterwards. So one of the questions should raise there is how would you integrate these new competencies in the curricula, these new skills in the curricula? And there we talk about 4 different approaches. So the first one is cross-cutting approach, that is green, digital, entrepreneurial, are relevant for all professions and implemented in all curricula. The second one would be the sector-specific approach, so the skills for a specific sector. The third one, the occupation-specific, so skills for a specific profession, occupation. And the fourth, that it would be just an additional course, a module, so these skills as an optional extra course to be done in addition to the existing curricula.
Thank you very much, Eric. I think this is a really important element of our discussion. And for that reason, we want to carry forward with that with a quiz. So please get your smartphones, tablets, computers out and connect and go to menti.com. In the meantime, I would like to thank our thematic workstream leaders for sharing a little bit of what we had discussed in the respective themes. And now we would like to get your idea on these 4 different categories, whether introducing new qualifications and competencies are for you most relevant if we do it in a cross-cutting manner. Do you need things that are sector-specific? Do you need aspects that are occupation-specific? Or do you think modular is more relevant for your context? So we're just trying to get your... Oops. Sorry. Sorry, then we have to... Could you please switch to the... Okay. Oh, it's a new code, I see. All right. Well, that's innovation as well. So the code is 695563. Oh, okay. Sorry. Here we go. 965563. So we're now very curious what is most relevant to you. We know that in some contexts very formal approaches are most suitable. In other contexts it might be more the more flexible approaches that are more promising. So here we go, and we get the first responses. So you have 100 points and you can distribute them freely over those 4 categories. You can either give each 25 if you find they're all equally important, or if you think in our context we only need modular qualifications and competencies, then you can give 100 points to that. So far only 1 managed to submit. So one more time, cross-cutting are for all professions and implemented in all curricula. Things like sustainability that could be, for example, mainstreamed in all. Sector-specific are, for example, green skills that could be, for example, integrated in the logistics sector to minimize transport routes. Occupation-specific are skills for a single profession. So that could be, for example, green skills for auto mechanics. And additional or modular skills could be things that are related to greening, digital, entrepreneurial skills, or others that can be available as extra courses or for upskilling in continuous training. So now we have quite a lot of responses, and it's quite interesting to see cross-cutting takes the first place. So we need to mainstream elements probably like sustainability in all curricula. Sector-specific is second, occupation-specific the third, and at the last place is additional and modular. However, not a big difference between the last 3. So they're quite closely together, but cross-cutting seems to be the most important and most relevant to you. So that's very important for us in terms of how we move forward in taking those examples and categorize them in those elements. So whoever is looking for ideas out of the BILT project will be able to find them in these categorizations. So thank you very much for sharing this with us. If you put in your email, you get the end result as well, so people might still continue on it. So the numbers might change, but I think we get a picture of how you find these approaches in terms of relevance. Now, if you could switch back to the presentation, please. So continuing now with our timeline, the BILT launch is today, so we're happy to have you here for that. Now it's stuck. Maybe. Okay. So we have workstream as a next step, workstream consolidation. So what you've just heard was the start of thematic work. So this will continue, and we have another workshop on December 4th, so after this forum. And the next element is going to be bridging, phasing in the bridging with Africa and Asia. That's also the reason for this launch, so that we make sure this project is known at the international level. And for that reason, we have also invited two representatives, one from Africa and one from Asia, to give their perspective. But last but not least, we're going to continue with this project until December 2020, when there will be a BILT Learning Summit, and where we will summarize the results that we had brought together in this period of time, with its initial focus on Europe, and then formally launch the bridging partnerships with Africa and Asia, provided the funding is ample. So now I would like to hand the microphone to our representatives from Africa and Asia. So getting started with Edwin Tarnow. He's principal at the Rift Valley Technical Training Institute in Kenya, and he has also been part of this journey since, I think, 2017, when we started to discuss BILT as a concept. So I would like to ask him for his reflections. What makes the BILT project relevant for him, and why is it important for you to be part of it?
Thank you very much, Jens. We are discussing something that is yet to come, so we are just going to give our reflections on what we think will be the case. We are happy that we have been a UNEVOC Center for some time, and therefore we have some ideas of what exactly would be coming. I will just have a quick overview of what I think would be the case that will be coming. We have been dealing with greening of TVET in Africa, in my college and other institutions across Africa, which we work with the United Nations, and we will always have the challenges that come with greening. One of them, of course, is the socio-economic issues vis-a-vis saving the planet. We are talking about ability for people to feed, and basic things that are supposed to be there vis-a-vis trying to maybe stop the fossil issues. So that is an area we expect to have challenges in. We have tried to present before. We have tried to work on the greening of technical colleges, and we have succeeded very well in some areas, and we're not able to succeed on others based on the socio-economic issues. In the issues of migration, one area that, of course, has been coming across, which I think I'm happy that my brother from Malta talked about, is recognition of qualifications across the places. Migration will always be a problem. Another meeting, I think 3 years ago, I mentioned that Kenya has always been having the highest number of refugees from Somalia from 1970s, so that we actually stuck, we got used to it. We used to have at one time 1.2 million of them. So the question is, what did Africa do about it? And what were the issues to do with the issues of recognition of learning in those areas, and also trying to recognize qualifications so that when they moved from one country to the other, they're there. The third aspect, of course, will be what happens in the country that is hosting them. Do you have a system that is going to help them to train? Is there some form of recognition of prior learning from where they come from? I was impressed recently when we were in Finland, and we saw what the Finnish are trying to do about that. In the issues of entrepreneurship, of course, the challenge has always remained very interesting. The impact of entrepreneurship is not been related to the teaching of entrepreneurship in colleges. We have been having entrepreneurship in Kenya for the last 15 years, the researches that are coming out are not very positive. And it's basically because entrepreneurship is taught by trainers or teachers who are not entrepreneurs themselves. So what happens is that it's just a notes story and a question of how it's done, more theoretical philosophy of entrepreneurship rather than practiced entrepreneurship. So I think we're happy about that. But one thing that I would like to talk about entrepreneurship that has been encouraging, which is a good thing, is the government of Kenya's new style, which started about 2 years ago, where there is something called AGPO, which is access to government procurement opportunities by the youth, where 30% of all government procurements must go to the youth. And there must be a youth, and if you are trained in TVET, you get more access to it. So I think those are kind of interventions that can really be able to be to assist in the growth of this sector. So basically, we will learn a lot from Europe. We expect, as you scale out this, we want to collaborate on specific areas, most likely that we've seen before as UNEVOC Center. One is collaboration in issues of research, and collaboration in issues of staff exchange for quick movement of information. Shamal put it very well. You don't have to invent the wheel. We can be able to move it from one corner to the other. The other one, of course, is joint policy developments. We know you have done very well in Europe in policies. Currently, the challenges that we'll face in developing countries is ability for us to move at the speed that is necessary between what we have learned as new, what is to be done, and what is the future of that particular aspect, and how fast can we cover the track between information and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edwin. That was quite concrete, so both in terms of fields of interest, but also in terms of what type of collaboration you would be looking for with European UNEVOC centers. So we've certainly taken note of it, and this will be the line in which we'll take this discussion forward. Now I would like to move on to Wen Ming and ask him the same question. What is important for you in terms of new qualification and competencies, in terms of the themes that we have presented, and what type of collaboration would you be looking for?
Okay, thank you, Ian. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And in Asia, we also face the similar problem, I think, in such as digitalization, greening, and new qualifications, new competence, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And I just give one example. In China, and China society has become cashless society. When we go shopping, you needn't pay in cash. We just use a mobile phone. And also in my city, just in a small city, Shenzhen, okay, we have got 700 artificial intelligence companies suddenly appear within 2 or 3 years. So we can never estimate what is happening tomorrow. We cannot say digitalization is coming. Actually, digitalization has come. So I think we all face the same problem. It is said, according to one World Bank statistics, and it is predicted that by 2030, 77% of jobs in China will be displaced. Okay, and also mention about migration. And in the first section for the keynote speech, the UNESCO director says, there will be some challenge. Actually, I will put one challenge to him. He mentioned 70 million migrants. Actually, in China now, we have 360 million migrants inside China. They are farmers. They move from the rural area to the city area. So that's a huge population. In this population, 70% of them have never received everybody in the society. But actually, this kind of policy seems very hot in industrial sector, in the employers. But the TVET didn't play enough role in this area. Okay, we have the national policy, we have the industrial or employers work, but we don't have the connection by the TVET. And if we mention Asia, 60% of population live in Asian countries. 94% of the countries in Asia are emerging and developing countries, including China. China actually is the one developing country. We have 1.4 billion people. Okay, we have a lot of people still living in the countryside. They are quite poor in vocational skills. So, and based on my experience with our Asian UNEVOC clusters or our UNEVOC community colleagues, we know that, we have put forward one artificial intelligence action plan by our college. When I share this with them, they just think we are quite advanced. Okay, and from this we can judge most of our Asian TVET, most of our Asian UNEVOC colleagues, okay, our TVET community are not so strong in this digitalization, greening, entrepreneurship, and new qualifications. So we need to learn from European, we need to learn from African, maybe, TVET community. And finally, I want to mention one proverb in China, that 3 heads are better than 1. So I hope this BILT project can bring all the wisdom from Europe, from Asia, and from Africa, okay? And if we work together, we try to create a shared, splendid future for the global TVET in the future. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Wenming, for the perspective from Asia. I think we've now spent 1 hour learning about the rich opportunities that we have created within the UNEVOC network to come together, to share innovative approaches and practices, and to start our bridging so that we can learn from each other. The BILT project is a really rich and engaging project that we would like to develop further with you. We built on everybody's contribution. And now I would also build for you to move on to the next slide for me one more time, because it seems not to work. So we're at the end of our session. Here we go. And I would just like to thank the panelists for opening our session for the lounge, for presenting what had been discussed in the course of the thematic workstream workshops, and also for the reflections from Africa and Asia on how we can connect and how we can take it together, can take it forward together. We also have a stand at the expo outside, so feel free to visit us there and to talk to us further if you have any further questions or suggestions, recommendations, or any wishes that you think we should address in the framework of this project. Before we close, I would just like to point your attention one more time to the bottom of the screen, because it's really the essence of, can you go back to the previous slide, please? It's the essence of the BILT project. It's not something that UNESCO-UNEVOC is doing in isolation and then presenting some shiny document to everyone. It's really a collaboration project. It's done in collaboration with the UNEVOC network from the early design on, and we're doing it in co-development. Sometimes it's not so straightforward because we don't have a concrete plan with all steps until the end, but the beauty of co-development is it's relevant to those who come. So we'll go that way. That's really the essence of BILT. It's coordinated by UNESCO-UNEVOC in collaboration with Bibi. We work very closely together. It's the institute in Germany that is just 10 minutes by bike away, so we're very happy to have Bibi close to us and to have this opportunity for this close collaboration. And last but not least, it's sponsored by BMBF. If we're looking for opening up the BILT project to other places, if other sources of funding are available, I'm sure it will be easier to achieve that as well. Before we end off the session, I would just like to appreciate the work also of the BILT team, and I would like to ask them to stand up. So we have Vera Hark, Michael Schwarz, Michael Wichert is not here today, and Katharina Hamacher of BIBB. They work very closely together with us, and us means Tristan Cole, Alexandra Filipova, Ken Barrientos, and Sabrina Ferraz-Guarino. Those together organized the BILT project, and you have to really imagine it's a quantum leap in what UNESCO-UNEVOC has been doing. So we had the kickoff in July, we have the launch today. In between, by the end of this year, we'll have had 5 workshops with 100 experts participating. It's a tremendous job that everyone is doing, including the video, web pages, everything that you see. So please give them a big hand and appreciate what they do for us. So we're well over time, so please visit us at the expo stand, and thank you once more to all the panelists, and I'll hand over to our next session. Thank you very much.